The National Rifle Association is taking some serious heat for a controversial new ad spotlighting, among other things, President Obama's daughters. David Keene is the president of the National Rifle Association. He's here in the Situation Room right now. David, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
I'll play a little clip from the ad first.
Sure, go ahead.
Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school? Mr. Obama demands the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, but he's just another elitist hypocrite when it comes to a fair share of security. Protection for their kids and gun-free zones for ours.
That's the ad. You're not placing it in a lot of places, but it's getting a lot of mileage out there on social media. But a lot of people are, why bring the daughters, Sasha and Malia, into this political
Well, it's
battle?
not about them specifically.
But you mentioned them specifically.
Well, we don't mention them specifically. We mention his kids and other
he's
kids
only got two.
That are attending schools that have private security guards. We're not talking about the Secret Service. David Gregory's kids, for example, go to that same school. What we're talking about is folks who have protection for their own children, send their kids to schools where they have protection, and then poo-poo the idea that the average American's children should have the same sort of protection.
Here, the White House press secretary, Jay Carney, among a lot of other people, were very disappointed. They said most Americans agree that a president's children should not be used as pawns in a political fight. But to go so far as to make the safety of the president's children the subject of an attack ad is repugnant and cowardly.
They know better. They know the point that we're making was a very clear point, that we believe the same kinds of safety that elitist kids have should be available to the children of the average working American.
But don't you think that the children of a president are unique, given the fact that he's commander-in-chief and that the security is so tight around the president?
No, that's different. They have their Secret Service protection, as the family should, and they always should.
Every president,
but the school that they attend and is attended by other
Chelsea, or they all. We try not to bring them into the political fight.
Of course, that's true. But the fact of the matter is that the schools in Washington that are attended by the elites, not just the president's daughters, but the sons and daughters of others, are protected by armed security. Not the Secret Service. The school has other security.
I think you could have made that point without necessarily bringing Sasha and Malia specifically.
Sure, you could make the point.
You could have made the point that elites at private schools, they've got security. We want all kids to have that. I think would have. That would have been, the point would have been made.
That's fair. You can make the point in a lot of different ways, but the important point is that the point we were trying to make is that point, not some other point.
What did you think of the president's proposals today? I want to go through one by one. Quickly, give me your answer.
Okay.
As far as background checks, right? And what's wrong with making sure, for example, a terrorist or a suspected terrorist who can't board a flight because he's on a no-fly list can't go to a gun show and just buy a gun?
Well, most guns, as you know, at gun shows require a background check. Something like 90% of them do, because
there's a huge loophole out there. As you know.
I don't know how huge it is, because there's been empirical studies, but there is what
person-to-person sales. You don't need any background.
That's correct. That's correct.
So why let somebody buy a gun who potentially is a terrorist?
Well, there are two problems. First of all, there's no evidence that terrorists are buying guns, but that's not the point. At the gun shows, and we have proposed this in the past, if you and I go to a gun show as private parties, I can't check on you. I'm not allowed access to those databases. Some years ago, when this was raised, we asked the ATF, we said, you could have a table or a booth at a gun show, and you could require everybody on the premises to do it. That's doable. Whether it has a lot of effect or not is a different question. The more difficult question with universal background checks is, what if you and I are neighbors, and you bought a new shotgun, and you say, Dave, I don't want the old one anymore. Would you like it? And I say, sure, I'll buy it. There's where you get into the question of how do you enforce it? How do you do it? We haven't seen the president.
You have to do that with cars.
Pardon me?
You have to do that with cars. You register cars.
You register your car. That's a different question.
When you sell it to your neighbor, they've got to.
You don't have to have a dealer's license to sell it to your neighbor. And your right to a car is not guaranteed by an amendment to the Constitution. But aside from that, what I want to see and what we want to see is what they really have in mind. We've got bullet points. There's going to be a lot more to it than that.
The polls are against you. You've seen all these polls, including our new polls. They're showing most people favor strict gun control. The new CNN Time ORC poll out today says 55% favor stricter gun control laws, 44% oppose. You got a huge fight on your hands. Give me your political assessment where this is going.
Well, as you know, Blitz, when you get into a fight with a president in the Congress, Those polls aren't going to mean a lot.
You don't think politicians
polls
read
are going to change? They read them, but if they just read them, they'd change their position every other day because these polls are going to go bouncing around. As you know, the so-called assault weapons question hasn't moved much. A lot of these haven't moved much. But when you're up against a president, if he is in fact willing to spend his political capital, you wouldn't want to mortgage your house and bet on how it's going to come out. I think that as this debate goes on, we've had this debate before, and as people begin to look at it, as the public engages, I think we're going to be fine. I think that the Second Amendment is going to survive this.
Will there be any change on the background checks?
I don't know. I mean,
what do you think?
I don't know.
Are you open to any change on background checks?
We're opening. I'll tell you what we are open to, which we've been at, and which we were delighted to see. We've been advocating for decades that those who are potentially violently mentally ill should be included in the NICS system. That's a good step. We're glad he's finally taking it.
What about magazines? High capacity magazines. He says no more than 10 bullets per magazine.
You know, that sounds nice. They were included in the so-called assault weapons ban back in the 90s. Didn't make much difference for anything. The problem is, you get into a bidding match. You know, somebody says you shouldn't have a 100-round magazine. They don't work anyway.
Do you think somebody needs 80, 90, 100?
Well, it depends. If they're at the range, if they're shooting a lot in a lot of the competitions, they do. I don't need one. You might not need one, but we're not everybody. But the fact of the matter is that you get into this, so the president says, well, we don't need 30-round magazine. How about a 10-round magazine? Andrew Cuomo says, well, I can do better than that. I'll make it a 7-round magazine. The fact of the matter is that the kinds of people who do this, particularly the mentally unbalanced, who are the most likely people to do it, shouldn't have any magazine. They shouldn't have any gun. Let's find them to the extent that we can. Let's make sure they don't get their hands on firearms, and then let's provide security, because somebody's going to fall through the cracks.
Because right now, those mentally unstable individuals, they can go out and legally buy guns.
That's correct, because they will not, because in most states, they are not and have not been included on the database. You know, we went back in 19...
I'm talking, forget about the database. They could go to a gun show, or they could just buy from an individual without any background checks.
But presumably, if they could do that, they would. But that's not where they're getting
Presumably, some crazy people just want to go buy a gun, and they can buy a gun.
Most crazy, you know, the only person who recognizing that the Aurora shooter was off was a gun dealer who said, I'm not selling that guy a gun because he's crazy. He should have been, and a lot of these people should be on the databases. You're never going to catch everybody. That's why you need security. The president is right in that sense.
On the military type assault weapons, are you open at all considering what the president has proposed?
If the president were talking about military assault weapons, yes. But military assault weapons
he says military style
that look like them. So what are they saying? They're saying, well, some of them slipped through last time because they took off a bayonet lug. Nobody puts bayonets on it. It was a cosmetic change. So this time they're saying, well, pistol grips. If you have the same gun without a pistol grip, it's legal. If it does have a pistol grip, it's illegal. They're the same gun. The problem they have with this whole thing is they're talking about semi-automatic firearms, which have been in this country for a couple hundred years. And they're saying, based on what we like the looks of, we're deciding we're going to ban some of them. That makes no sense.
What about having a director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms?
Well, they should have a competent
director. There hasn't been someone in charge for 6 years.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is a dysfunctional bureau. We saw it during Fast and Furious.
So do you oppose nominating someone and confirming that individual?
We don't.
The president said he wants to nominate Todd Jones to be the director.
I don't know Todd Jones, so I don't.
Should there be a bureau?
Of course there should be.
And should there be a director?
Of course there should be.
So you think it's about time that there finally be a director of the ATF?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll continue this conversation. David Keene is the president of the NRA. Thanks for coming in.
Anytime.